Hey, what's happening, everybody? It's me, Crazyfrankie, and I'd like to welcome you to my Week 16 4 key game picks of the 2020 NFL season. Before we talk about week number 16, as I said on the text on the fly, make sure you could take a look at the current playoff positionings on a lot of these teams, and we will get into my quick thoughts from week number 15. Thoughts from week 15, other than what I have to say, is what the bleep is going on with the Pittsburgh Steelers, a team that was undefeated towards the last part of the season, and yet they've lost 3 in a row. And this is something that is unordinary for teams that you think that would be dominant. But I'm starting to wonder now for the Pittsburgh Steelers is that have a lot of NFL teams figured out their weaknesses. And a lot of it is probably saying, a lot of it is on Ben Roethlisberger. I mean, he's not, obviously the injury he had is really that he had the year before, and then obviously his legs and all are becoming a factor. He's not throwing the deep ball as he once did before. But then again, also his receivers have dropped so many passes. I'm like, do we need to bring back Stickum for these players just to make sure they catch these passes? I really don't know what's going on with this Pittsburgh team. And what makes this interesting, the fact that they're dealing with some injuries, and that's really no excuse for a lot of these football teams. But Pittsburgh now, the way it's looking right now, that let's just say if Kansas City were to win out this weekend, they clinch the number 1 seed. Because now that the Chiefs have a 2-game lead in that span and that number 1 seed. So really right now, if you're a Steelers fan, this is a bit of concern. Now, if you go back through history, look, the New Orleans Saints did this too in 2009, but that was different though. The Saints were a much better football team than given that type of thing during that year. This is different though with the Steelers. There definitely are problems. Roethlisberger's not the same. His receivers, I have no idea why they're not catching his passes. Their defense is actually getting torched. I really don't know what's wrong with the Steelers. But other than that, you look at other teams, obviously you got to talk about the winless Jets. I never thought I would talk about this for a minute. I cannot believe they beat the Rams. A Rams team now that, in all honesty, you look like they were in good shape to make the postseason. They now could be in danger of missing the postseason in these next 2 games. If they lose to Seattle and then they lose out to Arizona, they could be eliminated. After all that hard work the Rams have done, the next 2 games are must-win games for the Rams. Because all they have to do is win one. They have to win this weekend, and that's given too much of a task for Jared Goff to handle because he's got to face Russell Wilson, and especially the fact the Seahawks could clinch the NFC West this weekend if they beat the Rams. I look at it in the NFC standpoint right now. Clearly, the class of the NFC right now is clearly the Green Bay Packers. They struggled against the Panthers last Saturday, and a lot of you are wondering, okay, there may be some iffy. They're a little bit iffy about that, but knowing Aaron Rodgers and that Packers team, they know they have to have home. They have to have the opponents come into Lambeau Field in order to get to the Super Bowl, especially with that weather that Green Bay has. Now, given the fact that, many times the Packers have had that advantage, and yet they've been beaten. And yet they got beaten either in the divisional round or in the conference championship. So, I don't know. I really wouldn't necessarily say that the Packers now could be a shoo-in now for the Super Bowl if having that home field advantage, because all they have to do is if they win this weekend against the Titans, they clinch the number 1 seed. But that number 1 seed's still in play because New Orleans has to win out their next remaining 2 games. So it's going to be tough to say right now because all Green Bay has to do is just win their game against the Titans and they've clinched the number 1 seed. Other than that, let's get into week number 16 because I want to try to get this video in as done as possible, and especially the fact that it is Christmas week as well. All right, let's begin with key game number 1. And speaking about the Packers and the Titans, that is the game I'm going to talk about. Titans versus the Packers. Packers are a slight favorite at 3 points, and I wouldn't be surprised if that number goes down to 2.5, maybe 2. Ryan Tannehill for the Titans, 21 of 27, 273 yards, 3 touchdowns, no interceptions in that big win last week against the Lions. Packers and Aaron Rodgers, 20 of 29, 143 yards, 1 touchdown, and no interceptions. Despite the Packers struggling a little bit, they almost let the Panthers come back and win. That actually was a surprise. His stats were as much lower as I originally anticipated. This is a key. It's a key game for both. It's a key game for both these two teams. But for the Titans, this is must win to at least stay ahead of Indianapolis right now, because currently the Titans hold the division tiebreaker for the moment, as Indianapolis is currently in one of the wild card spots. There's no question that despite the weather, the Titans' running game has to be effective in this game. Henry has to have a good game in order for the Titans to have a chance to beat the Packers at Lambeau Field, especially in that cold weather. But when you look at home field advantage, even though no fans or anything doesn't really make a difference right now, what better than to have a player that knows Lambeau Field very well other than your star quarterback? And obviously the record shows that he's just too damn good at home. And that's one of the reasons why the Packers want that number 1 seed, because they want opponents to go in the Lambeau. But it may not make a difference come in the postseason, because we don't know. But talking about this football game, Aaron Rodgers and that offense, they're in for an offensive slugfest. I expect this to be a damn good football game with the Titans running game and Aaron Rodgers in the passing game. A lot of it's going to come down to which defense steps up in this game. Which defense will get to who. And from this standpoint and all, for my pick here, I got to go with the Green Bay Packers here. I just think, to me, you have that home field and that brutal weather. The Titans are not used to that. And that's one of the reasons why I think that the Packers will wrap up the number 1 seed here this weekend. I don't see, because even if the Packers lose, the Saints would have to win out, and the Packers hold the tiebreaker regardless. So yeah, I'm picking the Packers here. I think they wrap up the number 1 seed in the NFC. The Titans will have to really play flawlessly, and their defense has got to find a way to get to Aaron Rodgers in order for any chance to win. And that's why I'm not going to go against Aaron Rodgers in this one here, especially at home. So my pick is the Packers -3, Packers over the Titans. Key game number 2, and talking about the AFC South, the Indianapolis Colts versus the Pittsburgh Steelers. The Colts are a slight 1.5 favorite in this one here. I wouldn't be surprised if that actually goes up to maybe 2 with the way the Steelers have been playing. Now, Phillip Rivers, 22 of 28, 228 yards, 2 touchdowns, no interceptions, in a barely slight victory against the Texans last week. Roethlisberger, 20 of 38, 170 yards, 1 touchdown, and luckily he only had 1 turnover in that game, one interception. This is where the Colts know the Steelers are down. They're feeling less confident now. I would think if you're the Colts here, would be the time to strike, especially the fact that the Titans still currently hold that tiebreaker in that division, and if they lose to the Packers, the Colts can leapfrog the Titans into the division lead. And it couldn't come at a time where the Steelers are struggling right now. This is put up or shut up time now for the Pittsburgh Steelers right now. What are they really made of? If they can't figure out their problems right now, as much as the way the current playoff seedings right now, because right now the Steelers are the 3rd seed, and this could go even worse for them if they end up as the 4th seed. So right now, I look at this football game. Pittsburgh's offense and defense, they got to wake up if they want any shot of beating the Colts. I know the Colts are not a high-powered team as the class of the AFC, but this is a time where really Pittsburgh, they better shut up all these critics right now the way they're saying, because everybody has said Pittsburgh will be one and done if they don't fix their problems. Look, the Steelers are already in the postseason, but obviously a victory here would give them the division, but the Browns are not that far behind them. I look at this football game for the Steelers. Their offense and defense has to step up. Indianapolis, plain and simple, hit them while they're down. Unleash that offense they have, and then get their defense, do all the rest to get to Roethlisberger and their running game. This is a pick you got to take with caution here, because, there could be a chance Pittsburgh might actually wake up in this game. But I got to make a pick here. I'm going to go with the Indianapolis Colts here. The Colts, I think, are going to continue to make the Steelers run more miserable, the way that they're playing right now, and who knows what kind of other problems they kind of have right now. And that is my pick here in this football game. I'm going to pick the Colts here. This is a pick you treat this with caution here because I really think this will be a close game. But I think the Colts will barely beat the Steelers in this one here. I like the Colts in this one. Colts over the Steelers at -1.5. Game number 3. It is the Miami Dolphins versus the Las Vegas Raiders. The Dolphins are a slight favorite at 3. It wouldn't be surprising if it goes a little bit lower, maybe 2.5. Here, Miami stats from Tula stats from last week's game and a big win against the Patriots. He went 20 of 26, 145 yards, no touchdowns, and 1 interception. Now, last week, David Carr had an injury to his groin, and right now, I have no official status whether or not he will play in this game, because really last week, Marcus Mariota had to take over for him. And his stats, he went 17 of 28, 226 yards, 1 touchdown and 1 interception in a loss against the Chargers. It's going to be very interesting to see what happens towards kickoff. There's no official word yet if David Carr is going to be ready in this game, because those type of injuries, they could put you out maybe a month or two. No official word yet. But if I had to take a guess, more than likely that Mariota is going to get the start in this football game. And this is crucial for the Raiders here because they're still barely hanging by a thread in their playoff hopes, especially the fact that if they lose this football game here, technically they wouldn't be officially eliminated. But in my book, I would say they would be eliminated because even if they went out their final game, they need a lot of help from a lot of other teams, and I just don't see it happening here. I think the loss here for the Raiders, I think they're done. So really right now, this is important because really right now, Miami's got that last playoff spot. And it's going to be very interesting to see how this football game is. This game is kind of interesting, the fact these two young quarterbacks, I know Mariota is much older than Tula, but it wouldn't be surprising if this game gets into an offensive slugfest here. But I look at it from a standpoint here, Miami's offense is better than the Raiders. Their defense is definitely much better than the Raiders. That's really one of the Raiders' major problems right now is really their defense, and how they just have a hard time ability to stop the pass. And really, they were fortunate enough that defense didn't let them lose that football. Their defense pretty much has been letting them down the last 5 weeks, I should say, in the fact that they almost lost to the winless Jets 3 weeks ago. But this is a game the Raiders must have to keep their playoff hopes alive and for the Dolphins to barely cling on to that last playoff spot. But to make this pick here, I'm definitely going with the Dolphins here. The Dolphins' offense is just a tad better than the Raiders, and their defense is much better than the Raiders. The Raiders' playoff hopes are diminishing, and I just don't see them even having, they need a lot of help, not only have to win this game, they need a lot of help from other places. And I just don't see the Raiders making the postseason. I think they're finished. I think the Dolphins will get the win here, and Tula will get another victory here, and the fact that this team really starting to make some noise. I doubt they'll even get far in the postseason, but in this football game, I see the Dolphins beating the Raiders. Take the Dolphins -3 in this one here. Dolphins over the Raiders. And finally, key game number 4, the big one in the NFC West, the Rams versus the Seahawks. The Seahawks are a slight favorite at 1.5. I wouldn't be surprised if that number goes maybe up more. Jared Goff last week in a dismal loss, a terrible loss to the Jets, 22 of 34, 209 yards, 2 touchdowns, 1 interception. From Russell Wilson in a big victory against Washington last week, 18 of 27, 121 yards, 1 touchdown, and 1 interception. Going over that scenario again one more time, the Seahawks win this game against the Rams. The Seahawks will clinch the NFC West division, and more likely they could be stuck at the 3 seed. But depending on the outcomes and all that, it wouldn't be surprised if they can move up to the 2 seed. For the Rams right now, it's put up or shut up time for the Rams because really a lot of the analysts had praised them most of the season, but then when they had some weird and losses that they shouldn't have had, It makes absolutely no sense. You lose to the Jets, and you got demolished by the 49ers twice when they were injured. And this couldn't come at a worse time now for the Rams, especially when you're playing against Russell Wilson and the Seahawks in Seattle, even though home field really isn't much. You know that Russell Wilson owns Seattle, and really, look, I know the Seahawks defense isn't all that great. Look, I expect this to be a close game. You should take this game with caution here because the Rams might wake up and actually beat the Seahawks here. But I just think the problems that they're having with Goff and that offense, their defense is playing at a decent level, but it's just not as dominant as it was 3 years ago. I got to go with the Seahawks here. I just think that Russell Wilson, and knowing the way he plays and the way he still dominates that division, this is a game the Rams need to win in order to not only clinch their ticket to the postseason, but to keep themselves from being in danger of falling out of the playoffs if they don't win this game here. Because they got the Seahawks and the Cardinals, who are also vying for a playoff spot. This is a game the Rams have to have, but I just think in this game here they're in trouble. I like the Seahawks in this one here, and I'm not going to go against Russell Wilson and the Seahawks here. Take the Seahawks at -1.5 in this one here. Seahawks over the Rams. All right, everybody, that wraps up my picks for Week 16. For all my Week 16 picks, please check the description below. And don't forget to tune in next week, where Week 17 is my special edition video where we go over the playoff scenarios, maybe some key games. Depending on what the outcome of all the games that happens in Week 16, my video is going to be completely different from from my traditional videos. So be on the lookout for that. Anyways, guys, I want to take this time to wish you all happy holidays, Merry Christmas, Happy Hanukkah, whatever you celebrate. Take care, everybody, and I'll see you guys next week when I talk about Week 17. Take care.